Captain Guyan of the ESA ship Victory reviewed the latest missive from the Joran delegation. Things were looking grim. Valhalla, the outermost Earth colony, had been blockaded by the Geranthian fleet. Claims of prior colonization were being made. It was all crap, of course, and the ESA fleet making its way to Valhalla would clear the blockade, but not without a price. The ESA ships were superior, but fewer in number. The Geranthians were one of the oldest members of the Galactic Union. They had a 10,000-year head start on Earth in terms of building fleets. What they lacked in sophistication, they made up for in sheer numbers. Plus, there was no telling what they might rain down on the planet once the ESA ships jumped in. Captain Guyan's temples began to throb as he reviewed the numbers again. His terminal then beeped, "Incoming call." He pressed a button to accept the call, and Representative Simmons appeared on screen. Captain Guyan had been dealing with this character for a few weeks now, ever since the Joran fleet first appeared. The man seemed greasy and made Captain Guyan uncomfortable, even over billions of miles of space. "Captain Guyan," Simmons said in a slight southern drawl that Guyan could not place. "I understand things aren't going well with our Geranthian friends." That would be an understatement, Representative. They are sticking with their claims, and right now full fleet engagement looks like our only option. The problem is we have 10 million colonists on the surface of the planet that might get bombed if we jump in, he replied. "I have been waiting for orders from Admiral Lee. Fleet won't be necessary yet, Captain. I just need you to have one ship ready to escort our man to Valhalla," Simmons said. "I have cleared it with the Admiral." "One man? Who?" Guyan asked. "His name is Remen. He is on his way to your ship as we speak," Simmons said, even as he terminated the call indifferently, leaving Captain Guyan more confused than ever. Captain Guyan looked at the slight man who had just arrived. He was wearing a short-sleeved white dress shirt with some khaki pants. A plaid bow tie completed the absurd outfit. He carried a black backpack as he entered the captain's office. "Mr. Remen, welcome. Is the rest of your delegation here?" Captain Guyan asked. Remen answered in a somewhat high-pitched voice. "I'm sorry, Captain, what delegation?" "Ambassadors usually travel with at least a few attaches, sir," Lee said. "Right, correct, you are correct. However, I am not an ambassador," Remen replied. "Can I ask in what capacity you are here then? Are you an attorney or legislator or some kind?" "I'm sorry, no information was provided, and you did not show up on my search of your name." "Oh, quite, yes. I understand." "Well, no, I am not an attorney either. I actually do not have any titles of any kind, really. I am a humble clerk for the ESA, Governance and Records Division. Although I was promoted last year to senior clerk, which, I guess is somewhat of a title, perhaps." Captain Guyan looked at the nervous little man and felt a sense of dread. The Geranthians stood at the table as was their way. Their hind legs made sitting an uncomfortable option. Captain Guyan had to bring over chairs from his own ship so that he and Mr. Remen could be seated. The man looked no more confident than he had when they had first met. In fact, he seemed even more frightened now that they were in front of the horse-like Geranthians. "You have requested this meeting, human. Now provide us with your terms of surrender quickly so that we may consider them," the Geranthian Admiral, Nathu, said through the translators. "Admiral, I can assure you, we are not surrendering," Captain Guyan replied. "Then you waste our time, human. This planet is ours. The people on the planet are ours, and if anything happens to any of them," Captain Guyan started, but he was cut off by Mr. Remen. "Excuse me, pardon me, yes. Sorry, if I may," Remen said. "And who is this weak creature?" The Geranthian admiral demanded. I am Mr. Remen, I am a clerk, well, senior clerk, ESA governance and records. Hello, I believe we met when introductions were made. You may have forgotten, that's okay, it happens quite often I find. Speak Remen, commanded Admiral Nathu. Yes, well, if we could first consider the blockade. According to the Galactic Charter, any blockade of a planet must first be debated and approved by the Galactic Security Council, Remen said. This was already done, Nathu said angrily, his nostrils flaring. It was, this is true, but well, was Form D35C, 11.6 ever signed and registered at the Division of Territories? Section 3, Paragraph 4 Sub. 5 of the Galactic Charter requires that the form be completed as set out in Annex 5 of Schedule 7. The Division of Territories has no record of you filing this form. I had requested one, but none could be found. I am just here to make sure everything is in order, and then I will leave the hostilities to those more suited to it, such as yourself and Captain Guyan. Remen said, shuffling through some papers, not looking at the admiral. Nathu looked unsure. Go check on those forms, he barked to an underling before turning back to Remen. If they were not filed we will do so. I'm sure you will, but the forms must be completed in person, and then a waiting period of 30 central spiral cycles must pass to allow for comment before you can effect the blockade. Also, are you in charge of the fleet, sir? Remen asked. Of course, I am the Supreme Commander of the Jorant fleet, he answered. In that case, you will need to appear in person at the Division of Territories to swear an affidavit per Section 6758 Paragraph 287 Sub. D that you were present during the Security Council debates. The affidavit can be found in Appendix 67 to Schedule 266. It will have to be completed in triplicate and witnessed, of course. The instructions can be found in Section 68,843. Please keep in mind there are several cross-references to properly identifying the planet in question at Sections 4976 through 4992. Remen looked up at Admiral Nathu, who was still trying to process the information. Human, we will complete this work, until then this planet is. Remen continued as if the Admiral had not spoken. Now until such time as the proper paperwork has been filed you will need to leave the systems per Section 14,998 Paragraph 5687 Sub. 4 through X. Your continued presence in light of the lack of proper paperwork is in violation of not only the Charter, Sections 45,336 through 45,394, but also of the Melnit Accord, the Skalkish Treaty and the Rothland Charter, all of which were signed by the Jorant race. I have copies here, if you need to reference them. Captain Guyan looked over at Remen, but the little man paid him no attention. He was busy pulling more paper out of the backpack. Now, I did file our notice of dispute prior to coming here. I have copies for your records, they are quite voluminous. We also notified the Security Council of the deficiencies. It took some time to explain, but once they understood the situation, an order under Section 95,388 Paragraph 358 Sub. T was drafted, signed and registered. Remen continued. What does that mean? Admiral Nathu said, looking to his advisors who were combing through their data tablets trying to read the fine print of the Galactic Charter. Well, since you failed to respond to the notice of dispute which required that you file Form B563 within 10 cycles, you were found in violation of Section 5877, which is relatively minor actually, usually a fine of only 3,000 credits. Remen said. The Admiral actually looked relieved. But yes, I almost forgot. The other violations were more than technical breaches, and as such, Earth and the Rothlands as well as 6 other races were granted the authority to exercise the rights afforded under Section 93,477 Paragraphs 11 through 98, Remen said. This time the admiral could not even form a question. Remen took the silence to continue speaking. So, right now those forces, led by Admiral Lee of the ESA, are currently over your homeworld, Jorant. Captain Guyan tried to hide it, but if Remen knew he was surprised, he did not let on. This is outrageous, this is an act of war, Nathu said, his muscles trembling. I'm afraid I can't speak to that, sir, although I can say that we did not file forms P577 or C488, which would be required prior to declaring war. At least not that I was able to locate. They may have been filed in the wrong place though. Our junior clerks have been trying to clean things up. However, per section 46,426 paragraph 4 sub G, if you were to attack the fleet around Jorant, that would definitely be an act of war. Remen was cut off by the admiral. Enough. Enough of your stupid words, human. We will. The admiral tried to continue but looked completely exasperated as his advisors were unable to confirm anything Remen had just said. As Captain Guyan and Remen were roughly escorted off the Jorant ship, the small man continued to clutch his backpack closely to himself. Once back on the Victory, they watched together as the Joranthian fleet winked out of existence, leaving Valhalla floating alone in space once again. Captain Guyan regarded the awkward man. I get the feeling there is something about you that you aren't telling me. Remen looked at the captain, showing no emotion. I'm not sure I know what you mean, Captain, but if you could let me access a terminal I would appreciate that. I have to file some expense forms and whatnot. Being a senior clerk has increased my paperwork, I'm afraid. Author's account and link to original text is in the description.